She's coming, yeah.
Okay. Condensation. Okay. Oh, it's condensation.
Oh, it's, no, it's more that I filled it and got a little water on it.
Council, I was informed by our building manager, if we point these up, you point at the speakers, and that's sometimes so he said,
Either down or away, yeah. Okay, thank you. Good evening, everyone. I'd like to welcome everybody to the Tuesday, March 28th, 2023 meeting of the Sierra Madre City Council. I have heard from Mayor Pro Tem Krebs. Apparently she got a flat tire on the boulevard and she's awaiting a ride here, but she will be here shortly. But with that, Madam City Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Yes, thank you. Mayor Edward Garcia
Here.
and Mayor Pro Tem Kelly Krebs is excused. Councilmember Jean Goss.
Here.
Councilmember Christine Lowe.
Present.
And Councilmember Robert Parkhurst.
Present.
Mr. Mayor, you have a quorum this evening.
Thank you, Madam City Clerk. Moving on to our meeting agenda. Do we have an approval or anybody want to move anything out of the consent, or are we happy with the agenda?
I'll move to approve the agenda as it is.
Second.
We have a first and a second, a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. We have an agenda. Okay, well, Councilmember Krebs was on the docket for doing inspiration and the Pledge of Allegiance. I don't have any inspiration prepared, so I'll lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. That's okay. So please rise if you're able. Ready? Begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Okay, moving on, if we could get a motion for reading resolutions and ordinances by title only.
Move to approve reading resolutions and resolutions and ordinances by title only.
Is there a second?
A second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Unanimous. Thank you. Okay, meeting minutes. This was a pretty thick packet. Do we have any substantive changes regarding the minutes?
Mr. Mayor, the City Clerk's office received an email from Councilmember Parkhurst and Mayor Pro Tem Kelly Krebs with non-substantive edits, and City Council and the City Clerk's office has made those changes to the minutes.
Okay, here at the dais, do we have any changes, recommendations? Okay, do we have a motion?
Move to approve as amended.
Second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Approved unanimously. Okay. All right, moving right along to mayor and city council reports. Who would like to start?
I'll go first.
Please.
Let's see. We had something called a Wisteria Festival here recently, and I got to go and attended it happily. Dodged the rain, as we all did, but I was really pleased to see that despite the rain, we had a really good turnout. It was also nice to see all the people going up to the Vine and actually being able to tour it. That was wonderful. And I understand it was for both houses this time, so that's quite something to see when that's available. Just wanted to give a shout out and kudos to the Chamber of Commerce and all the city staff who put that together. I'm sorry that the car show wasn't quite what we'd hoped. About half the entries got cold feet because of the rain and didn't show, but that's about the only downer of the day. But it was really a very successful event. On Monday, March 20th, I attended the Community Services Commission meeting. The meeting began with a report by Eagle Scout candidate named Dylan Todd on the completion of his Eagle Scout project. Dylan assessed, repaired, and replaced the seating at our picnic tables at Sierra Vista Park. I just wanted to congratulate him on his completion of that project. He'll become an Eagle Scout as a result. And it's a very helpful and useful contribution. A lot of people use that equipment in the park. Also during the meeting, the commission approved 2 special event permits, one for the Sierra Madre Elementary School annual booster event on Saturday, April 22nd, and one for the Friends of the Library art event in Memorial Park, which will be this year on May 6th and May 7th. Just a side note, the commissioners each have, I guess, volunteered to kind of keep checking up on our local parks in town, which I thought was kind of cool. Commissioner Bartlett was recently over at, according to her report, over at Goldberg Park and reported all good. Commissioner Carlson, however, reported that the duck at Turtle Park has been stolen.
What?
And apparently staff is working on replacing it, so that was a little bit of a bummer, but otherwise the park's okay. This past Saturday, I attended the Sierra Madre Playhouse donor recognition event at Board President David Gordon's house. It was very well attended. It was a very, really nice affair. I got to speak very briefly, and then I introduced Congresswoman Judy Chu and Assemblyman Chris Holden, and they had some very inspiring things to say. It was all in all a very delightful event, and I just wanted to give kudos to David Gordon and the Playhouse for putting it on and inviting me. And that's my report, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councilmember Goss. Any other reports?
Mine's very brief. Just that I have been driving on the new Sturtevant in the middle of its project, and I know it got delayed a little bit, but it is fabulous. It's coming along very quickly, and I've been speaking to a lot of the neighbors, and they've all been saying how grateful they are for the crews that have been out there and the communication from the city to them about what's going on. So it's been wonderful.
Thank you. Councilmember Parkhurst?
I have nothing to report.
Okay. So yes, the Wisteria Festival was wonderful. It was great to see the chamber out there and staff, police, fire, CERT, everybody was out in full force. We did get a little bit of rain. I think that kept some of the vendors away as well. But I was honored to give the mayor's trophy for what I thought was the best car. And I thought it was, since it's the Voice of Sierra Madre, that the Volkswagen microbus was the appropriate mayor's trophy for Sierra Madre. So that was my winner. I did not attend the trustees meeting yesterday. I have been in email contact with Librarian Reagan and also the chair of the trustees, Laura Palmer. And I have got a partial update from Public Works to see what's going on regarding an update on how we're coming along with the building. It's my understanding that just today we interviewed a couple of the first architects, and some of the interviews will continue throughout the week. Then once we have the architects in line, then things can hopefully progress at that point. And before I go to announcements, I'd like to welcome Mayor Pro Tem Krebs and let her report out if she has anything to report out.
Just that I attended the Natural Resource Committee meeting a few days after our last council meeting, and there was an interesting discussion about REACH ordinances, about potential, environmentally related, natural resource related ordinances that the commission might, or the committee might consider, which would put Sierra Madre, ahead of the requirements, kind of like our water conservation standards are, ahead of and more stringent than, is required by state law. And so they were talking about various topics, including electrification. So all of those things would obviously have to come to our attention and be considered at the council. But it was an interesting conversation about what possibilities they might consider.
Great. Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Now for some city announcements. Just a reminder that 2 days from now, Thursday, March 30th, City Hall will be hosting their town hall meeting. Is it here in Chambers? Want to make sure that's right, because I did see it was on the Eventbrite, I think it said library, but it will be here in Chambers, okay? Registration is required. There will be a flyer on the back table, and you can register through, I believe, Eventbrite. That's the way we've been doing it. Also, very, very fun. The Sierra Madre firefighters are hosting the annual Easter egg hunt, as they always do, on the Saturday before Easter. It'll be Saturday, April 8th at 9 a.m. at Memorial Park. 6 golden eggs will be hidden throughout the park. Bring the kids to see if they can find a golden egg for a special prize. Flyers for the event are on the table as well. And you've seen, hopefully on social media too. Also, please come out on April 22nd for Earth Day events. Also, my daughter Violet's birthday. She's a Earth Day birthday, we like to say. There will be a landscaping dedication ceremony at the post office at 9 a.m., followed by Earth Day booths and events at Memorial Park from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. Also on April 29th, please join us for, it's very exciting, our first community bike ride. The Community Services Department is partnering with the SGV-COG, the San Gabriel Valley Council of Governments, for a bike ride and wellness fair. There are flyers in the back for to register for this event, so that's very exciting. We're kind of kicking off, hopefully once again, a summer of wellness, and we're doing a little early in the spring, so I'm pretty excited about that. Also, Community Services is continuing to be busy, but we want to make sure that we have a full commission for Community Services. So there will be 2 vacancies that are anticipated for the Community Services Commission. Anyone interested in filling these vacancies, please contact our city clerk's office for more information. And finally, speaking of vacancies, there's going to be 1 vacancy on the Natural Resources Commission. So please, once again, contact the city clerk's office for information on the application. And that concludes my report and announcements. All right, moving along to public comment. Now's the time to provide public comment for any items that are not on the agenda. Please keep your comments to 3 minutes. Fill out a yellow card and present it to the city clerk if you have not already for items not on the agenda. And with that, Madam City Clerk, do we have any cards?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, thank you. We have a number of cards. The first from Warren Skidmore.
Hello, City Council members. Earth Day is going to be a busy day, I feel. Pasadena Unified School District's 2023 Science Fest is taking place on April the 22nd at John Muir High School. We've got over 80 groups coming from institutions, colleges, industry. It's a big event. All the PUSD schools are invited to show how they teach STEM and support STEM at their schools. Lily is going to be showing her little art project that she did to learn about caterpillars and butterflies. So this is a free event for families and students of all ages from any school in the PUSD region. So everyone is invited. So we'll have groups from the environment, JPL Space Missions, blacksmithing, emergency services, medicine, public health, robotics, law enforcement, utility providers, SpaceX, lots from Caltech, the armed forces, TV and film, sports, aerospace. There's lots to see. So we're trying to inspire students about the multitude of jobs, careers that are in the STEM fields, and show them the educational and career pathways to get there. And it's all a voluntary event, 0 budget, believe it or not. But we've got over 500 volunteers who are geared up for the day. And Helen's one of the organisers with me on our big committee. So thanks very much, Helen. So I hope to see people there. They can come after your events here in Sierra Madre, come over to John Muir High School for the rest of the day and enjoy the Science Fest over there. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Mr. Skidmore. And are you with PUSD, or are you one of the 500 volunteers, or?
I'm one of the 500 volunteers. I'm an enthusiastic science dad.
Okay. Well, thank you. And it's at John Muir, and what time does it start?
It starts at 12 noon and runs till 5.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thanks very much.
Thank you, Lily.
Mr. Mayor, the next speaker is City Librarian Layla Regan.
Librarian Regan.
Hello, I'm Mayor Garcia, Mayor Pro Tem Creeves, Council Members Goss, Parkhurst, and Lowe. It's wonderful to see you. I'm just here because I wanted to announce that we have a wildlife program coming up. We have Living with Wildlife Bears for Saturday, April 8th at the library at noon. And so this I have a fun thing from the person who's running it. It is on behalf of the California Department of Fish and Wildlife. We're going to have human-wildlife conflict specialist Mackenzie Rich will be presenting Living with Black Bears in Southern California. The presentation will serve to provide a basic understanding of black bear biology and how it informs their behavior. It will help the public to understand the department's policy on black bear management and decision-making processes, and give the public tips and tools for preventing conflict with black bears and other wildlife species commonly found in the foothills community. So we're hoping to have that attend. Additionally, we have a writers workshop coming up. Every Tuesday in April at 6:00 p.m. at the library, we will have a different writer at the library, and they are going to talk about their books and their process. And then you're allowed to stay, and if you happen to be an aspiring writer, you can have them help workshop some of your work. And finally, I'll keep it short and sweet, the annual bookmark contest ends April 13th, so we want to remind all of our wonderful kindergarten through 8th graders that are entering our bookmark contest that you have until April 13th to turn in your design. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. And I think that presentation on wildlife with bears is great. Just because we're not seeing a lot of activity right now, it's my understanding it's because of the colder weather. Doesn't mean they're not going to come back once it warms up. So we'll really appreciate that. Thank
We
you.
will also have a general wildlife one in May. It is not quite finalized just yet. I don't have a fun flyer for that one, but I will be back to present that one when we have general wildlife.
Thank you, Librarian Regan.
Mr. Mayor, the next speaker is Bob Buckner.
Good evening, Council.
Mr. Buckner.
Last fall, I just happened to stumble across a program on KCET where they were talking about work that was done by the U.S. Geological Survey. This is back in 2010, and they had something, they did a whole program, and you can get the information on it. It's called the ARC storm, which that stands for Atmospheric River 1000. So it's like every so often California gets hit with atmospheric rivers. Oh, that's interesting. So I looked to see if there's anything useful for Sierra Madre here. And what it shows is that there are good portions of the state, Central Valley, lower areas of Los Angeles, that will be underwater when we get an atmospheric river event of the type that caused the flooding of most of the Central Valley in 1865 or 62. Anyway, so I thought that's kind of interesting stuff. Well, I didn't have to wait long. And we have more of it coming tomorrow. And what it points out is that we're getting better, the science is getting better at warning us, but it only gives us a few days warning or weeks warning if something's going to hit us. So we have to be prepared for these events well in advance, as they have done over the years with our little Sierra Madre Dam, the one in Arcadia, the Arcadia Dam. Now, what happened this year, there's an article in the LA Times, which just came out in January, and we haven't had any, atmospheric river type massive rainfall in January, in December and January, but there was enough rainfall because of the Bobcat fire to wash down twice as much debris as was behind the dam before they cleaned it out a few years ago. And it filled it up to the point where the only water going through the dam was over that hole they cut in the dam as part of the earthquake preparedness because the dam was no longer structurally fit. Anyway, my point is, we've been lucky in Sierra Madre. We haven't had a fire in Little Santa Anita Canyon. There's no significant burn area up there. When the burn happens, we could have our little dam completely filled up with debris. And the one thing that I've noticed, I live on Acacia, just next to them. I've been enjoying the river that's running down there right now. The wash is running like it has not done in my lifetime. But what I wonder is whether there's one hole in the dam, a pipe that lets water through, whether that is adequately sized to be optimum for the type of events that could happen. I mean, if you have a burn and it fills up with debris, it's all bets are off. The water's going to be coming over the dam. I have a lovely picture here from the internet says Mary's Market on it. It's a picture of water roaring over the top of our little dam, and I understand that happens from time to time when we have a really big wet storm. So I guess my request is to, you have the ability to work, and you work with the county, and just to make sure we understand that everything is up to what our current requirements are. We have since we hopefully have a better understanding, and that the dam is set up as best it can to protect us if we have either a deluge or a lot of water or.
Thank you, Mr. Buckner. If I could have the city manager's office or Public Works follow up with you, and I personally will want to follow up with this and see if the COG will be involved or somebody else. So thank you for bringing it to our attention.
And I'm happy to send everyone links to some of this information if you'd like to have some.
Would you do that?
Please, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Buckner.
Mr. Mayor, the next speaker is Philip Yao.
Hello, Mr. Yao.
Hi, how are you?
I'm well, thanks.
Good evening, City Council. Because you know my name already. My name is Philip Yao, and I live at 513 Syracuse Drive. I'm against overdevelopment, and I'm against McMansions. So I will be voting no on Measure M.
Me too. Please, no comments.
Okay. All right.
That's inappropriate. I'd like to ask you to please leave. We'll give you a little more time, Mr. Yao. Please leave the chambers. Sure. Thank you.
Okay. Exciting.
Thank you, Mr. You have 3 minutes. So
All right.
Go ahead.
Thank you. I just want to let you know a little bit of my experience. I recently spoke with a number of Sierra Madre residents, and I was surprised that many didn't know the details of the Meadows development. They did not know the size, the design of the houses, nor the favorable lot coverage increases that have been granted by the city of Sierra Madre. And those are really concessions that are not normally granted to Sierra Madre residents, homeowners. Okay, I'm going to go through a few numbers. Because of that, I thought it was important to, inform the rest of the folks that are watching. Numbers are dry, but, hopefully with that, people can understand better what the development is all about, okay? From Whit Martin's 2022 Sierra Madre home sales in the Mountain View News, there were 92 single-family houses sold at an average size of 2,250 square feet. And then from a local architect who lives in Sierra Madre on Sunnyside, who had previously given his analysis, he told me to you folks also, he had surveyed 50 houses next to the Meadows development, 10% or two-story and 90% single-story. So really out of the 50, only 5 of them are two-story and 45 are single-story. His calculation is the average lot size is 11,000 square feet. The average house size is about 2,000 square feet. In contrast, the Meadows, there are 42 houses planned. 31 of them, that is 74%, will be two-story. Quite a contrast to the 10%. The remaining 11 will be single-story. The minimum lot size will be about 7,800 square feet, and the homes range from 3,800 down to 3,200 square feet, and the average is about 3,600. What this boils down to is that the Meadows will have over 6 times more two-story houses than the neighborhoods around it. And based on average numbers, the Meadows houses will be approximately 1.8 times, almost twice as big as the surrounding houses. So for those listening and dialing in, hopefully that clears it up, because I've encountered a few people who didn't know, but they voted the direction that they did. The Meadows lots would be about 30%, while the Meadows lots would be about 30% smaller. And interestingly, as one Sierra Madre resident described, just like Orange County, where she moved from, okay? And furthermore, this is really McMansions on steroids. Well, I hope that you guys, would take those numbers, and now that you have them, you can decide for yourself. However, really what I hope not really want, but I hope, is that you will join me and vote no on Measure M. That's it.
Thank you, Mr. Yao.
Thank you for the extra time.
Oh, sure.
Have a great evening.
You too.
Mr. Mayor, the next speaker is Alice Wichello.
Bring another card up. Thank you.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Alice Wichello. I live on Sierra Madre, Council people. I'm a proponent of no on Measure M. During this past year, being a member of Protect Sierra Madre through canvassing door to door, manning information booths, phone calls, I have spoken to many citizens of Sierra Madre. What they want is to save the beauty and wildlife, to keep the small hometown flavor that makes our town such a unique place to live. What they don't want is 42 McMansions that will cause congestion, create a fire hazard up just above our town, and put more strain on our electrical and water services and raise property taxes. The developer stated it would take minimum of 5 years to construct 42 McMansions, at least 5 years of heavy construction trucks creating traffic up and down Sunnyside and Carter and other streets. And we can stop the citizens of Sierra Madre by voting no on Measure M. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Wichello.
Mr. Mayor, the next speaker is Deb Sheridan.
Good evening, council members. Here I am again, Deb Sheridan, Valley Vista Drive. Actually, I wasn't going to come tonight, but in view of the misinformation and downright lies of the Yes for Measure M campaign, I am here to clarify the no on Measure M proponents are running a clean campaign. We will not bully our residents, our staff, or our merchants. We will state the facts without resorting to lies on social media. Our pledge to the citizens of Sierra Madre is to run an honest, dignified campaign. And I must say, dignified. And so please, everybody listening, watching, vote no on Measure M, no McMansions. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Sheridan.
Mr. Mayor, the next speaker is Nancy Beckham.
Hello, council people and the mayor. And by the way, Mayor, it was very nice to see you at the Wisteria Festival.
It was nice to chat with you as well. Thank you, Ms.
Well,
Beckham.
it was got a little damp out there,
It
let's put it that way. However, I'm here to talk to you tonight because I'm also not a proponent of voting yes on Measure M. I'm sorry, I have spent almost 3 years of my life working on this, and the more I got into it, the worse it got. So I'm here to tell you, Sierra Madre, as we all know, is a charming foothill village, unlike anywhere else in Los Angeles County. A no vote on Measure M overturns the Sierra Madre City Council Approval Ordinance 1461, which allows the construction of a massive tract housing project of 42 McMansions called The Meadows at Bailey Canyon. The project would be built into the hillside adjacent to Bailey Canyon Wilderness Park, destroying the natural slope of the land and the tranquility of the surrounding communities. Although I know as well as you do something is going to be built up there, I don't want this one to be built because I trusted a developer as far as I could throw it. If approved, this Meadows will be the largest tract housing project ever built in Sierra Madre and does not conform to our residential zoning ordinance or the general plan developed by the city residents to reflect our values regarding our neighborhoods and the environment. Instead of abiding by the rules that apply to the rest of us, an exclusive specific plan governs the project. Thus, the developer can pack large multi-million-dollar houses on small lots that are not affordable for most families. Measure M is I better go home. Measure M is bad for our environment. The meadows would destroy the habitats of the native animals while cutting down more than 100 trees on site in adjacent Bailey Canyon Wilderness Park. Measure M will allow this project to be built in a very high fire hazard severity zone, California's highest severity designation. We do not need increased fire danger in Sierra Madre. Measure M will increase traffic dramatically in the surrounding area where sidewalks are rare, endangering residents. And yes, Jose, I will still help you work on those sidewalks. Measure M will impact our water supply with more demand during a drought, raising concerns and possibly raising rates. Measure M sets a dangerous precedent for future development, i.e. Stonehouse. Measure M arose from the Sierra Madre City Council ignoring the concerns raised by residents for over the past 2 years. A no vote against a Santa Monica developer with special interest funding that doesn't share our concerns or values. Let's ensure that Sierra Madre is preserved and we maintain our quality of life. Please vote no on Measure M. But just so that Gene Goss knows, I spent 6 months last year working on the bear. I went to the elementary school, I went to the library, I bought books over, and the elementary school in Sierra Madre delivered the information to the kids at that school so that they could go home and have their parents sign a thing that the kids explain to their parents why you don't feed the bears. And I'm going back again because I'm trying to get the funding right now through the Sierra Madre Civic Club to get the coloring books done. Enjoy your night.
Thank you, Ms. Beckham.
Mr. Mayor, the next speaker is Pat Elkhorn.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and General Council members. The no on Measure M, I've got to join Nancy, to join 1,400 voters who signed a referendum. They're urging the voters also to vote no on that. However, they did not say the whole truth about their facts when they encouraged people to sign. Their fact, a no vote will stop the construction of 42 homes. That's true. However, they did not tell the voters that the measure has that there is another plan waiting on the wings. It's already been admitted to the planning department. It's already qualified by the state for a total of 50 homes. This SB 330 development will have little oversight by our city, and the city will lose all the benefits that the current approved development will provide, while adding 8 additional homes in place of a park. The no people say the meadows will destroy wildlife habitats and remove existing trees. The fact is, both the meadows and the SB 330 will require the removal of trees and wildlife habitat. However, a yes vote will give you, the Meadows project proposes to replace those 100 trees with 500 trees. With SB 330, the developer is only required to replace the 10 oak trees. A no vote will give you 8 additional homes in place of the park. A yes vote will give you a community park. The no people say the Meadows project will increase traffic, impact our water supply, and increase fire danger. The true fact, the Meadows project has already been vetted by an independent EIR environmental report, which reviewed and passed by the Planning Commission, the City Council, and the City Attorney. A no vote will give you more traffic, larger impact on our water supply, and have no impact on fire danger. The EIR will have to be modified, but no new significant impacts are expected. A yes vote will give you a fully vetted EIR and a fully mitigated project. A no gives you more traffic, a larger impact on our water supply, and have no impact on the fire danger. When you are aware of all the full facts, you will vote yes on the Meadows project that has been through multiple hours of public meetings
public comment, and an experienced planning commission and city council members who were re-elected on the premise that they are experienced and thoughtful and acted on the best interest of the city of Sierra Madre. Vote yes on Measure M. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Alcorn.
Mr. Mayor, there are no other speaker cards, and city staff did not receive any emails for non-agenda items.
Thank you. Okay, so we have a few presentations this evening. It's my understanding we do. First, I'd like to invite Ed Chen with Athens up to give a presentation on composting. Hi, Mr. Chen.
Good evening, Mayor Garcia. Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem Krebs, Councilmember Goss, Parkhurst, and Lowe. Thank you so much for this opportunity to make a quick presentation to give you an update regarding our upcoming events, as well as introduce some key Athens personnel. As this picture is indicated, well, thank you for Mr. Sierra Madre Citizen of the Year, D. Alcorn, for your past support at our compost event. So real quickly, we're going to go through this very presentation very quickly. I appreciate Mayor for previewing what is to come, which is the Earth Day event. That is a picture of the 2022 Earth Day event, where we have knowledgeable recycling coordinators and municipal account managers that will be there on hand to answer any questions, talk about the newest recycling legislation, and give residents some very helpful information. So thank you again for previewing that, and we look forward to participating in this event again this year. A quick introduction. My name is Ed Chen. I'm the Director of Government Affairs. I've been in the city for more than 10 years, been with the company 12 years. Really just an incredible honor to serve this community. I want to introduce Steve Diaz, if you could stand up, please. This is our route supervisor. He is very knowledgeable of our city and is probably the face and that's most familiar to customers if they have any issues, any sort of complaint calls that come to our call center. It gets routed to him, and he closes them out daily, and he's very responsive to all the city requests. So appreciate you for being here, Stephen.
I look forward to working with all of you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And also we have Daniel Martinez on our team, where most of your commercial accounts will have a experience in interfacing with Mr. Daniel Martinez. A quick background about Athens Services. Athens, in the 12 years I've been with, has really grown to be a leader in waste and recycling services in Southern California. You may not know, actually, in 2014, we took over the pressure washing, and Sierra Madre is a very unique city in terms of we actually providing that porter service of pressure washing your sidewalks. That's why you see just wonderful streets. You maintain a really beautiful downtown with the village character that's known across the foothills, and we're very proud to offer these myriad of services and providing that in your beautiful community. A quick update. This is more of a global update. I know in past council meeting we've talked about the big legislation 1383. We're talking about these right side driving Jeeps that we have had to go out there, and these sort of infrastructure investment we have had to make sure that in terms of once we get 1383 implemented, we'll be touching and interacting with residents and commercial customers alike. And this is just a really quick update, global update on our investment in that infrastructure with these right side driving Jeeps. That'll be flipping the lids and helping the residents comply with this new Senate bill, with this new state legislation. A quick year in review. We've diverted nearly 5,000 tons of solid waste. We collected 8 tons of Christmas trees and distributed 20 tons of compost. We'll continue to give back to the community in terms of our philanthropic charitable involvement through the Chamber of Commerce as well as other organizations, but mostly we look forward to continuing to close the loop with our compost giveaway events, which the council in the past as well as many residents have participated year after year. We have probably one of the most successful compost events across all of our cities in terms of getting community participation here in Sierra Madre. So speaking of that compost giveaway event, the next event coming up is Saturday, April 8th, and the same rules apply. It's a self-serve event, but we'll be on hand to help with any residents in loading those composts into their vehicles. we encourage people bring sturdy containers. We have a 30-gallon limit to make sure that everybody get their compost, but we'll be bringing 20 tons of compost, so there'll be plenty for all of Sierra Madre if residents decide to fill up their containers and come back for second rounds or more. And that concludes my presentation. I thank you very much for the opportunity to serve this wonderful community. And I'll hand it back to James.
Thank you, Mr. Chen. Do we have any questions?
I have a question. Thank you, Mr. Chin. Last year, I happened to be walking by that compost. I think it was the second day that it was out there. And a man was out there loading up his pickup truck, and he had a full pickup truck load of, I think, 5-gallon buckets full of compost. And so I don't think there was really any enforcement of that 30-gallon limitation going on. I don't know if that's a problem or not. I just saw that with my own eyes, so.
Absolutely. During the first hour of the event, between 9 to 10 a.m., we'll try our best to really enforce that 30-gallon limit, so that its intention is so that everyone in the city will have plenty of it. But after that, we want to make sure it goes as much of it as possible.
Thank you.
You can borrow my pickup truck if you on day 2.
Not needed.
Any other questions for Mr. Chen while he's here? All right. Well, thank you for that presentation.
Thank you.
All right, so next up, we're going to have an update from Public Safety. First, I'd like to invite up Fire Chief Bartlett.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. Wait for James for a second to get this presentation loaded up. Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Today I'm pleased to present the Fire Department's annual report for 2022. This report out is intended to impart insight into the deployment, response, and accomplishments of the Sierra Madre Fire Department. The Sierra Madre Fire Department is comprised of dedicated professionals that provide all-risk service to the community and to those that work, shop, and visit. Your department's members work extremely hard to exhibit professionalism and quality in the service they deliver. Each opportunity we get to provide service showcases our proficiency in structural and wildland firefighting, emergency medical services, hazardous materials, and technical rescue. As this world continues to transform and move at breaking speed, it is essential that we remain adaptive, creative, and innovative. Your Sierra Madre Fire Department is and has been up for the task. We will remain committed to protecting life, property, and our environment through compassionate service. And for this, I am proud to serve with the men and women of our department. Our department is comprised of 5 divisions, which are administration, operations, emergency medical services, training, and fire prevention. All of these obligations are managed by 19 members, 15 of them being operational, 2 administrative, and 2 part-time. We continue to meet or exceed all requirements, standards, codes, regulations, and legislation that oversee our operations. In 2022, our calls for service were one of the highest years that we have. I was not able to locate any numbers that exceeded those. You can see that we just did a little bit over 2,100 unit responses. A unit response is basically a number that is assigned, basically a piece of equipment. So for instance, the engine and the ambulance would be basically 2 units. And so the units mostly will go together, but basically we responded to almost 1,400 total incidences, and that's the actual calls for service. Since I started basically over 20 years ago, that's an increase of about 133%.
Is that inclusive of the automatic aid?
Yes, sir. Thank you. Yeah, the increase that we've seen in just a year since 2021 was about a 20% increase, and most of that can be attributed to the Unified Response or Automatic Aid. We did about 296 calls in 2021, equaling about 21% of our calls out of the city. Department training, we did nearly 4,000 total hours, the bulk of it being in fire suppression, where we hone our skills on auto extrication, basic firefighting skills, control and command, company officer development, driver operator, emergency medical services, fire ground survival, live fire training. And if you see down at the bottom right-hand corner there, you'll see some special guests we had down at the Rio Hondo Fire Academy. IT Manager Milan, City Manager Reynoso, and Councilmember Parkhurst were able to attend that, which hopefully provide a little bit of insight of some of the training that we do. We also do hazardous materials, rapid intervention, technical rescue, ventilation, and wildland firefighting. Inspections are a big part of fire prevention, where our focus is to lessen the potential for fire, life safety, and environmental hazards. We accomplish this by enforcing laws, codes, and ordinances through inspections, permitting, and safety education programs. Last year, we did just under 1,700 inspections were conducted. We continue to try to look at ways to receive funding and also help our community with preparedness for wildfires and through education. Last year, we completed our first year of our fire hazard and fuel reduction grant, which totaled $78,000, split up into 2 years. So we're just entering into our second year this year coming up. It is part of what we refer to as our SMART program, which is Sierra Madre Achieves Resiliency Together, and kind of comprised of green waste and chipper events, which our mayor participated in last time. So we invite basically anybody north of Grandview to participate in that. If you can get your green waste out to the curb, we have contracted with a chipping company to basically remove that for you. We also, part of that program is our educational forums, which we will be having a number of them come out again this year, and we're looking for some good participation, and there will be some materials put out on that as well. Our financials for the fire department, although we're not in the business of making a profit, we do have cost recovery methods. And as you can see, last year, out of our $2.9 million budget, we recovered basically 20% of our budget. And that is mostly done through our EMS billing. We also have our paramedic subscription program, as well as any deployments we have for mutual aid. We get reimbursed for our personnel as well on that. Speaking of, last year, we were able to participate in the state's mass mutual aid by providing support to a couple of incidents. We had the McKinney Fire, which is in the Klamath National Forest, at the very top of our wonderful state here. And matter of fact, our folks that were assigned to that, they worked 24 hours on, 24 hours off, and on their time off, they actually were housed took lodging in Medford, Oregon. So it was quite a long trip for these folks, where you can see they spent basically 12 days out there. Our second assignment was the Oak Fire in the Yosemite National Forest, where we spent about 7 days. These opportunities not only help us to do our share in providing mutual aid to the state, but it also is invaluable to our members to gather that kind of experience, for which we can apply here when that time happens. Hopefully it doesn't, but we all know that it is cyclical and it's bound to happen again. So that experience again is invaluable. The department also takes pride in its community outreach programs, and in 2022 we did a list of things, but some of our highlights are basically we provided free community classes in partnership with Code 3, one of our local businesses in town, to do sidewalk CPR. We even just did one most recently on Stop the Bleed and basic first aid. We held our annual Fire Prevention Festival, and at the request of then Mayor Goss, we arranged for the first annual Sierra Madre Car Show, which was sponsored by the Sierra Madre Professional Firefighters Association. We passed out thousands of pieces of candy and exchanged golden eggs for Easter baskets, which, as the mayor spoke to, is about ready to happen again. We're really excited for that, a long-standing tradition. We also led Santa in a sleigh through town to the station where he visited kids and kids alike. And we also support numerous programs such as school tours and visits, Boy Scout and Girl Scout tours for their badge work. And we definitely love partnering with our library and community services to also reach out to the community in any way we can. So that concludes my report, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Chief. Do you have any questions for Chief Bartlett?
I do have a brief one. I think I've asked you this before, I just don't recall the response. How do we get more people to sign up for the paramedic program?
That's an absolute great question, sir.
We get revenue out of it, and we would save them money, and
yes,
it's a win-win for everybody.
Thank you so much for that opportunity to pitch this. We do have the paramedic subscription program at the cost of $76 annually. And what that will do, will waive any fees to a patient for transports or anything that has to do with that. Transport to the hospital, medications, narcotics, supplies. It'll waive that fee. This was our lowest year at about $32,000 compared to previous years. COVID was our biggest year. Obviously, a lot of people wanted to take advantage of that program should they need the transportation. However, what we're looking to do is we are going to be sending out mass mailings to the public coming up this year. As part of the new fiscal year, we budgeted for that, so every resident will receive some kind of media that will promote our program. So we're hoping to see a bigger turnout for that. And we also got some things in the work to maybe how we can enhance that program and bring more folks in as well. So more coming on that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I have a quick follow-up question for us to help support the fire department and subscriptions. Would we be able to ever have that as an online payment instead of as a check or credit card brought to the city?
Something we can definitely look into.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Chief? I know you mentioned cyclical, and we've been having a cycle of precipitation. So what can we do as residents as far as maybe brush abatement, or as the water kind of goes away and we hit summer, what should we be doing in our homes, around our properties rather?
Thank you again for all these plugs. I appreciate it. We are about ready to kick off our brush abatement inspections starting next month in April, and it'll run through May. Basically, what we're really looking for is as I talk about our SMART program, we have to achieve that resiliency together. We can only do so much as the fire department. Community members and residents, they do have their portion of what they need to do, and proper brush or vegetation management along with home hardening is going to be part of it. Attending our programs, looking at our website. Come over and visit. If you want us to come out and take a look at your residence, we're more than happy to try and fit that into our schedule. We can give some advice on some things that we'd like to do. There are also companies out there that will do it for a fee, but they can come out there and assess your property as well and gives you some good advice and point you in directions for those that can't manage it themselves. There are also companies out there that can assist with that. But we're always looking at ways to try and promote it.
Thank you, Chief. And thank you to the men and women of the department for the busiest year yet on a similar sized staff. So we really appreciate all the hard work that comes out of your department. Thank you.
Absolutely. We thank you for your support.
Sure. All right. So next we get to hear from Chief Barrientos. Good evening, Chief.
Good evening. Good evening, Mayor Garcia, Mayor Pro Tem Krebs, and City Council. I will be presenting to you the 2022 annual report for the Sierra Madre Police Department. I will provide you with an overall assessment of 2022 versus 2021 crime and traffic, crime trends, task forces, legislative updates, risks, harm, and current community programs and future programs to build on public trust. Currently, this is our personnel. We have 24 personnel assigned to the Sierra Madre Police Department, 18 sworn, including myself, and 6 non-sworn. We have 7 part-time police officers, 6 reserves, 2 part-time dispatchers, and 2 part-time records clerks. 2022 crime report. Currently, we use we call the uniform crime reporting. It's a standardized reporting for crime data. That's reported monthly to the Department of Justice and FBI for crime data collection. Currently, they're classified as Part 1, Part 2 crimes. We're in a transition phase right now. It's going to go to NIBARS, which is the National Incident-Based Reporting System, which is more accurate. So for 2023's annual report, we'll have Part A and Part B crimes. Some of the crimes from Part 2 now have moved over to Part 1, and vice versa. For total Part 1 crimes, we saw an increase of 87%. 2021, we had 15 burglaries, 5 residential, and 1 rape. 10 were auto vehicle thefts or burglaries. 2022, we had 28 burglaries, 14 residential, 4 commercial, 10 auto burglaries. However, we had 0 rapes. In total, in Part 2 crimes, we saw a decrease of 7.4%. However, we saw an increase in thefts, forgery, fraud, vandalism, and weapon possession in 2022. Next page here, this is a map that depicts crime in the bordering areas or other police departments around the area. It just shows community transparency. Currently, Sierra Madre PD does not have a crime analysis mapping system nor participate in a system. However, that's something that I'm exploring at the moment. However, this map shows that we're obviously doing our job. We're keeping crime out based on our total crime analysis. But you could see Pasadena over to the left. Anything that has a mask is your burglaries. Anything that has to do with a dollar sign is either a theft, larceny, etc. When we debrief our suspects, believe it or not, they tell us that geographically we're challenged. We have 3 ways in, 3 ways out. Small department, quick police response. In addition to that, if you kind of look at our deployment of 2 officers and a supervisor, you have 1 officer technically for 1 square mile of the city. So we have pretty good coverage for the city. As far as detective investigations, total reported cases decreased. However, handling of criminal investigations increased for 2022. Overall, we had a good clearance rate. We clear a lot of our reports. Felony arrests were up, while misdemeanor arrests were down. That's likely attributed to most subjects being cited out in the field. They don't really take any bodies for misdemeanor charges up at Pasadena. However, more cases were filed in 2022 compared to 2021, likely attributed to the changes in the DA filing guidelines. However, firearm seizures were up 30%. This just demonstrates that our detectives are being proactive in pursuit of gathering facts. Traffic safety. In 2022, we saw a slight increase of traffic collision reports. However, traffic collision calls decreased, likely attributed to more people working from home and less people driving. Hit and runs remained about the same for both years. Year to date, my analysis revealed that we've had a decrease in citations. However, we've had an increase in warnings. However, we need to stay focused on traffic safety, enforcement, and education. In addition to that, my motto is saving lives through traffic enforcement. But currently, we received for 2022 an Officer of Traffic Safety OTS step grant for $30,000, which pretty much we could focus, or we could only focus on DUI, distracted driver, which is cell phone, and education. You could actually pull people over if they're doing good or bad, and as part of the step grant. Okay, I'm going to talk a little bit about crime trends, Sierra Madre. Burglaries. 2023, we have 3 big crime trends here, 3 to 4. Burglaries, financial crimes, identity theft. Financial crimes and identity theft kind of go together. and catalytic converter thefts. So currently for 2023, we have 6 burglaries, 3 commercial, 3 residential. We're slightly down compared to 2022. However, with the warm weather coming, more people are likely to leave their doors unlocked, vehicles unlocked, and windows open when they go to work. During COVID-19, we were slightly down. More people are working from home. People have returned to work. Our commercial burglaries, most of those occurred during AM1 hours, so they occurred somewhere between midnight and 6 o'clock in the morning, while our residential occurred between 2 p.m. and 6 p.m., most of them during darkness, during our transition of shift. Some of the strategies we have in place: increasing police visibility, field briefings, so doing our briefings out in the field, increase community awareness, increase our public safety announcements, use social media platforms, and increase participation in Neighborhood Watch. That kind of died out during COVID, so we're going to bring that back and build from that. As far as financial crimes, financial and identity theft kind of go together. I'll go through these real quick. It targets the elderly or those that are vulnerable: elderly scams, romance scams, crypto, metaverse. Anybody know of metaverse? You go into an outer space, invest money, buy yachts, mansions, and other financial institutions. The MO or modus operandi they're using: social media platforms, Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, skimming, phishing, spoofing, and basically our elderly or vulnerable victims are depositing money, obtaining dot credit cards or some sort of Apple Pay, and basically sending them overseas with the numbers and losing out on thousands and thousands of dollars. Well, we saw a decrease on financial crimes of 50%, 2022 versus 2021. For 2022, we only have 2. What's concerning about it is they're very, very high dollar, extremely high dollar with the 2. So that's something we need to really pay attention. Identity thefts, we also saw a decrease for 2023. However, if you look, we had 25 cases in 2021. We were up to 44 cases, 76% increase over a year. So our strategy is to get our community stakeholders, religious groups, and schools involved to educate and get some more of those public safety forums and community meetings to get people engaged in preventing future ones. Next one real quick: catalytic converter thefts on a rise. There's precious metals, platinum, palladium, and rhodium. So to give you guys an overview, nationwide, 2020 reported 15,000 units stolen. 2021, 25,000 units, 66% increase. 2022, 150,000 units, 500% increase. In Sierra Madre, in 2021, we had 5, and then we had a 140% increase in 2022 of 12. In 2023, we only have 1. I'm happy to report, though, that we had 2 significant arrests involving the catalytic converter thefts. I actually put the pictures of the property that was seized. Just keep in mind that possession of the property in itself or the tools is not a crime unless you have other factors, such as, in this case, they have the catalytic converter, carjack, etc. And as you can see, there's meth pipes, so drugs involved. All right, some of the task forces we have currently. We have the Task Force for Regional Auto Theft Prevention, that's TRAP. It is our 2nd year participating. We have 1 officer or an investigator that's currently assigned there. They investigate vehicle thefts, vehicle fraud, and catalytic converter rings. It's state funded through the DMV. Last year in 2022, we had a catalytic converter engraving event. 76 vehicles from Sierra Madre were inscribed. And I think the big benefit with TRAP is LA County support, advanced training, exposure to for the officers to have surveillance, search warrants, complex investigations, build on relationships, retention, and opportunities. Internet crimes against children. This is something else we participate. It's been in existence for 24 years. About 5,000 law enforcement agencies participate. They've made over 90,000 arrests over the last 24 years. Sierra Madre, we had 3 cases in 2021. We made 1 arrest, and they all involve search warrants. 2022, we had 5 cases, 2 arrests, all for child pornography. For 2023, we have 1 that's open. We've received 5 year-to-date. However, the others have been sent out to other jurisdictions that have investigative responsibility. We'll have a nexus here, but they were sent out. So, and most of those, you know, they meet these kids through social media platforms, gaming, sexting, etc. Okay, we're also part of the Foothill Special Enforcement Team, FSET. Best way to describe it, FSET's a SWAT team. It's a regional SWAT team. Founded in 2004. Several years ago, we were allowed to participate under Chief Hunt. However, several people tested, none passed. It's a very rigorous process. You have to do a physical agility. It's the same SWAT course as SEB, which is the LA County Sheriff's. On top of that, you have to qualify, and it's scored with pistol, rifle, and an oral interview. I'm happy to, under my command, that we prepared 3 subjects, or 3 of our officers, over the last 3 months, and we've had 3 that actually qualified. They did an outstanding job, so now we're part of FSET. It's the first time in the history of Sierra Madre, and I'm proud to be the chief during this time. So we'll be part of it. Some of the big benefits, now we get LA County Regional Assistant, greater safety for the community and the suspects, advanced tactical training that can be brought here. The officers will be very, very well equipped, minimizes high-risk situations such as search warrants, retention opportunities. The great thing about this, just look at what occurred yesterday at the school. We're going to have, if you look at it, that officer is very well trained. He probably has some military experience that took command and control. That's something we'll have here. And we have so many schools here, so it's a great win-win for Sierra Madre. Okay, Foothill Air Support, it's fast. That's established 1999. 10 cities participate. The cities are listed up there. They basically do live feed cameras, FLIR, which is a forward-looking infrared, night vision. Just to give you an idea, in 2021, we used the air support 119 times, and in 2022, 114 times for support. And then the benefits to having so right now I'm advertising for a loan or a position. It's a cost neutral. So if we send an officer down there, the Foothill Air Support actually pays for the officer's expenses. However, it has a high failing rate, and it requires the officer to have 3 years minimum experience. So the benefits would be also advanced training, retention opportunities. What this does, it enhances public safety, deters criminal activity, and obviously the airship assists in apprehending offenders. And then real quick, legislative updates. We have complied with, or we're in compliance with the Racial and Identity Profiling Act. So we are in compliance. In addition to that, we are in compliance to Senate Bill 2. That's if you're not aware, that's the decertification of police officers. So if there's a serious misconduct, and it'll list the serious misconduct, I can go into that on a later date. But you could decertify a police officer, which means he would never be a police officer. Police officer not only in the state of California, but in the United States. Then armed risk assessment. So just to give you an idea, calls for service. 2021, our dispatch received about 24,000 calls for service. 2022, almost 38,000 calls for service, a 56% increase. Police, however, were dispatched to calls about 9 to 10,000. It was almost about the same. They were all about 9 to 10,000 calls that we were dispatched to in each year. Most calls that we were dispatched to were suspicious vehicles, suspicious persons, or suspicious circumstances, alarm calls, and some vehicle stops. Personnel complaints. We saw we have it divided into inquiries. Inquiries are the ones that are not serious misconduct. So you complain you don't like the officer because he gave you a ticket. However, we're required by law to take the complaint. They're handled still as an investigation. We handle them as an inquiry versus a full-blown personnel or internal affairs complaint. So we had 5 in 2021, and we've seen a reduction for 2022. The internal affairs complaints, we saw a increase of 100% from 21 to 2022. None of them are serious misconduct. However, most of them are attributed to off-duty incidents, unfortunately. And for 2023, currently we have 0 internal affairs complaints. And then getting to uses of force, 2021 compared to 2022, we saw 150% increase. The one I was concerned about is the 2022, we had 5 incidents where force was used. Most was a taser, believe it or not. None for 2023. I read through all of them to see if there was any issues, concerns. There are none. However, most involved mental illness, drugs, or alcohol. So to mitigate in the future some of these issues, we're going to look into further training into de-escalation, tactical disengagement, and command and control. Pursuits, 2021 to 2022, 50% increase. We've had 1 year to date. However, about 95% of pursuits are canceled. So that's something that I'm going to revisit also the policy. I think we need to tighten up, or we could tighten up the policy with pursuits. It's a risk versus reward. I think the risk is too high for the reward, especially if you have a property crime versus a violent crime. Professional development. There we go. All right, some of the professional development that we have, I've already discussed some of it. We've already sent 2 of our supervisors. We're going to send the other 2 sergeants and the corporals just for succession purposes to train them one up. First line leadership, trilogy leadership training. We also have active shooter training. We invite you all, and I was told to invite you all. We're hosting a training. We've had about 15 agencies who have shown interest. July 17th through the 19th, we're holding it up at Upper Campus, the middle school. And it's basically going to be on active shooter, so we're well prepared. If you look at yesterday's incident and you see their chief talk, they trained and trained and trained so they wouldn't have the Uvalde incident occur. So that's kind of what we're doing. We're going to look into more de-escalation training, tactical disengagement, and if you don't have a crime, you tactically disengage. Hard for us to do, but we need to. And command and control. Also, I've had a meeting tomorrow with the U.S. Marshals. They're loaning me their training facility. It's a Sims training facility. LAPD, their training cadre, has opened up the doors to me. LASD, the sheriffs, they have opened up the doors to me, and San Gabriel Valley training cadres have all opened up the doors. So, and then lastly, too bad. Those are the, here we go. All right, community outreach. Current community programs that we have in effect here at Sierra Madre. We have the public in 2022 public safety event, neighborhood watch. It's been in existence, however, because of COVID, it kind of died out. We're going to get more community involvement in it. We've been giving the active shooter training. It's kind of spiraled outside of Sierra Madre. Other agencies are calling us to provide that type of training. Coffee with the Cop, that kind of died out under COVID. We're going to spearhead that again. We had the cattle converter event last year in 2022. We're going to see if we can bring it for 2023. And we did initiate our CCW, our Carry and Concealed Weapon program. We have about 8 applicants from the city. Our partnerships is Department of Fish and Wildlife, Living with Bears, Firearm Education and Safety, and then we're part of the Juvenile Diversion Program with the DA's office currently. And then lastly, my goals for 2023 is to build on community partnerships and public trust. Currently, we're setting up a event for financial crimes intervention prevention through education, so that we prevent some of these financial crimes from occurring. Also, tomorrow I'm going up with some of my officers to St. Rita's. We're doing the cyberbullying, bullying, and school threat presentation tomorrow. I just got asked by a counselor from lower campus, the elementary school, that they have a 9-year-old terror, that they want us to give a presentation also at the lower campus. And also the Citizens Academy, it never took off. That's something else we're going to build on. And some of the committees that I want to create is the School Administrative Committee, so we could discuss these issues pertaining to kids at least once monthly. A Business District Committee where we could introduce the flock cameras. And then lastly, increase our community participation in social media platforms, public safety announcements, foot beats, bike patrols, and community meetings. That's all I got. I'm open for questions.
Thanks, Chief. Any questions for Chief?
I have some.
Please.
Chief, very fine report, and I've heard a lot of police department reports over the years. I think it was the best I've heard yet.
Thank you.
And I'm very impressed by your success getting us into the Facet program. I think that's a game changer. You never know when we're going to need that.
Absolutely.
And I have a couple questions. Last time we had some discussion with the police about whether our arrests were actually getting prosecuted by the district attorney's office. We were assured that, at least the last time I heard from our previous chief, that was actually improving, that we were seeing more arrests being prosecuted. Is that still the case?
Based on my data, yes.
Okay, great.
More cases are being prosecuted.
Good to hear. And also, I had a real close friend who's happens to be Jewish, who had a anti-Semitic flyer put in front of his house. This was, I think you're aware of it. This happened a few months ago, I believe, and they were distributed in other parts of the city. And obviously, it's a hate crime. I didn't see that in any of your categories. Do we have any kind of special? Is our intent up for that?
Yes, that was a hate crime incident you're talking about.
Yeah.
The baggies with the little
Yep.
pebbles and rocks in
Yep.
it with
Christmas Eve, I believe.
Yeah,
swastika
Christmas Eve.
sign. Yeah. So it's a hate crime incident. It's not a crime. All they did is they threw them out the window. I think we picked up like 100, 200 of those little Ziploc baggies containing. So we do have a category for 2023.
Yeah.
I could actually give you some data
Okay.
related to hate crimes or hate crime incidents.
That was particularly shocking here in Sierra Madre. I mean, I guess maybe you could expect that maybe in other places, but we certainly, that's new for us here. So I'd like to talk to you about that some other time.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And the use of force, I made a note to myself. Yeah, the category, you put it in as a category based on someone challenging us, or based on, how did you come up with that category?
So anytime force is used
Anytime.
to apprehend a suspect, overcome resistance, or prevent great bodily injury or harm to another person or oneself, it's categorized as the use of force. It has to be investigated by a supervisor to see whether or not we were in policy and we didn't use excessive force. Then what we do is, once the report is done, it goes through the captain. Captain adjudicates to see whether it's in policy, requires training, or it's out of policy.
Right.
And then from there, it would go to the chief, and the chief would approve it or send it out for further.
Okay.
So it's any time force is used. So apprehending somebody, a wrist lock, is not considered a use of force. So this is actual physical force. So, as I said, in those 3 categories.
Okay, thank you. That's it for me.
Any other questions?
I had a couple. On your slide on the filing rates, I'm trying to understand what the numbers are there, because on the previous slide, we're talking about the number of crimes, and they're pretty low, but when we've got a criminal case filing rate of 600, that's 600 cases, but we don't have 600 crimes, so I'm trying to
You're talking about the 660 on the right?
Yeah.
Those are actual total reported cases. So cases that go through detectives, this is just on detective data. So not all cases that go through detectives get investigated. So some of them could be supplemental reports. A lot of them are outside assist, Department of Children and Family Services, Adult Protective Services. So a lot of reports, these are just total reports that go, or cases that go through detectives.
So they may not result in a crime then, and that's why they don't show up on the crime statistics. Is that
Correct.
right? Okay.
Don't elevate to a crime, correct.
So I had to follow up on that same slide. I just want to understand, I like to look at data and think about data, and we have the rejects at 55, but what is that in relation to? So kind of bouncing off Councilmember Parker's question of the 660, did we have fewer arrests and crimes, and that's part of the fact that we would then have less filings, therefore less rejects, or is this really a function of the DA being a little more strict on crime?
So I think they're being a little more strict on crime, so we're getting less cases rejected, 2022 compared to 2021.
Okay.
2021 is where we were wobbly. They've just made some changes. They changed the guidelines for filing. We're getting more of our cases filed.
Okay.
For 2022.
Great, that's good to know. Any other questions for Chief?
Yeah, I had another question. So you'd mentioned on the use of forces situations, you had some of them that they were people with mental health issues or intoxication. Tell me about kind of our use of social services, and how do we engage with that, and how do we bring those people in and try to, sometimes some of these people, they're at a point where they've peaked and they need a little bit of, they need to de-escalate, which I'm glad that you guys do, and then they need, a social safety net after that. So how does that work? How do you work with other resources within our community around that?
So one of the big resources, actually, we got training, and a resource we work with the LA County Department of Mental Health. They've provided training. They also have a liaison with the LA County Sheriffs who have provided services, and I'll give you a perfect example. We have a gentleman who lives off of Mountain Trail who had PTSD, military, access to high-power weapons. The report that we got is that he threatened to kill his wife. We responded to the house. We tactically deployed outside, a distance away from the house. We later learned that he was at home by himself, didn't pose a threat to anybody. Wife was at work. So that's what you call tactical disengagement. That's very difficult for officers to do, but you don't have a crime. Your action causes a reaction. So if we go in there, door knock, try to pull them out, you're gonna get a reaction. And what it's gonna result in is an officer-involved shooting, and now we're gonna get sued for actions that could have been prevented. In that situation itself, we reached out to LA County Department of Mental Health. We learned that he had PTSD, had a doctor or psychiatrist assigned to him, in addition to some LA County sheriffs. The next day they did a follow-up and they put a 72-hour hold. So we do use our resources. If they're underage, we'll use another resource through LA County Department of Mental Health for kids. If they're not high-risk suicide, we also use where they'll find resources for the family, especially if they're low income. So there's a lot of resources. We're very resourceful in that area. If it's an adult, adult protective services, power of attorneys, things of that.
How often would you say that you're using the social services to support your work in that, and to try to bring services to people who need help?
Easily every other day.
Okay. We
use it very, very often. That's one thing this department is very resourceful. We reach out. What's great about Sierra Madre Police Department is because we're not crime driven, violent crime, we could actually take our time and fully investigate or get people resources. We've been very resourceful.
Great. Thank you so much, Chief.
Very good news. Very good news. Okay. Anything else for the Chief? Okay, likewise, thank you, for protecting us citizens here in Sierra Madre. We're grateful for your leadership and the men and women on the force, so we're very grateful. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Moving on to the consent calendar. Madam City Clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The City Council previously approved reading the ordinances and resolutions by title only. Before the City Council this evening, there are 6 items for consideration. Item A is consideration of resolution 23-25 approving certain demands. The recommendation for this is for the city council to approve. Consent item B is consideration of resolution 23-26 authorizing the city to enter into participation agreements and allocation agreements with CBS, Allergen, Teva, Walmart, and Walgreens in a settlement of a multi-district litigation to address opioid public health crisis. The recommendation for resolution 23-26 is council's approval. Consent item C is the consideration of the award of professional auditing services contract to Rogers, Anderson, Melody, and Scott to perform the annual audit services for 3 fiscal years, commencing with the current fiscal year, June 30, 2023. It is recommended that the City Council award the contract to RAMS. Consent item D is the second reading of ordinance number 1465, amending chapter 17.22, that's accessory dwelling units, of Title 17 zoning of the Sierra Madre Municipal Code. Staff's recommendation is that the City Council adopt ordinance number 1465. Consent item E is the second reading of ordinance 1466, amending the Sierra Madre Municipal Code for the purpose of general cleanup, clarification of language, clarification of intent, correction to code references, and formatting for legibility. The recommendation is for City Council to adopt ordinance 1466. And finally, consent item F is a consideration of bid proposal not to exceed $75,000 for the purchase, installation, and programming of 5 new Motorola mobile radios to replace the current mobile radios in police vehicles as part of a multi-year replacement project. And the recommendation from city staff is for the council to approve this item as well. Mr. Mayor, that concludes my report.
Thank you, Madam City Clerk. And I'll just go through the consent calendar, see if we have any questions on items A through F. So any questions on item A? Yes, please.
Could you possibly tell me, City Manager Reynoso, or I guess it might be Carlson?
Management Analyst Carlson?
Yes. So there was one item, it's for $14,417.34, and it's for the First Transit Incorporated for the Dial-A-Ride. Could you tell me exactly what that, I mean, I assume it's the Dial-A-Ride van that goes around, and is that a monthly?
Yeah, that is a monthly fee. It's for Dial-A-Ride as well as the roundabout. So there's 2 programs. It's the demand service plus the thing that goes around. It's the same program we've had for a number of years. It does come from Prop A funding, so it is restricted funds. And anything else I can answer?
Prop A funding meaning we don't pay it, or we pay it, but we...
It's from the state, and it needs to be used for specific transportation purposes. And just as a side note, we will be bringing a report to council, I believe it's April 11th, with an update on our local transportation program, and I'll be asking for some direction from council at that time.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Any other questions on item A? Item B,
Yes.
please.
Just one clarification. It appeared that the attachments attached the Allergen contract twice, so I assume that the CVS contract, and did not include the CVS contract, so I assume the CVS contract is in the same form, just like all of the rest of them?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, thank you. And I guess my question is, and maybe it's a discussion point, Mayor, you can decide if we want to move it to the other portion of this discussion. Given
You think you can formulate a question?
No, I can formulate a question, but it's sort of policy driven. Given the amount of money that the city is allocated, which is, I'm never one to turn away money, but, it's not a lot, and there is a fair amount of compliance and reporting requirements through this and restrictions on its use. Have we considered whether we have things to do with this money that would comply with the use restrictions, and is it enough money to sort of justify the steep sort of compliance and reporting efforts that are required? And do we need to make that, I guess the overarching question is, do we need to make that determination now, or do we enter into this and then either opt into getting the money ourselves or opt into the County of LA program when we sort of can figure out the answer to that question of the cost-benefit analysis.
We have a administrative analyst, floor is up.
Hi, good evening, Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, council members. So the $50,000 that we will receive from this second agreement is over the span of 6 to, I believe I said 16 years. And it's those payments will be done on an annual basis. So it's $50,000 in the span of over that time that they have given us. So it is something that's very minimal, an amount that averages out to something that's very minimal. There are also requirements that we must meet with those fundings, 87% being, for certain things. So we believe that the best option for Sierra Madre would be to allocate those funds to the county. That way we are able to still benefit from those funds in the future should we need to through programs that they may have established. We also have the option, if I'm correct, city attorney, is that we can decide year to year where we would like those funds to go. Whether we decide that this year we do have a need for it, let's take those funds. Now this year we would like to give that money to the county so that they can use it towards their programs that they may have that we can also benefit from in the future.
That's helpful, thank you. I didn't realize that analysis had been done. I appreciate that.
Mayor Pro Tem Krebs, if I may add, for tonight, what we're asking council is to participate in the program. Once we participate in the program and there's funding, at that time staff will make the determination of what's the most appropriate use of funds.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions on item B? How about item C?
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, please.
Just a question. So for the Rams contract, we went out to solicit for potential other auditors. Is that correct? And did we get any responses to that?
Councilmember Parkhurst, we did go through the RFP process, and I'll have our finance director expand.
Great.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. Yes, we did go through an RFP process, so we did send out to 3 firms that have government experience. They're with cities, nonprofit, and we only received one bid, and it's our current auditors.
And can you opine a little bit on why we only got the one bid back? Why there was no one else interested in putting in a bid for this work?
Yeah, I wouldn't really know why they wouldn't put the bid out. Maybe staffing.
Is there a shortage of firms in this area of work right now, in your opinion?
There's no shortage of firms. We did want to reach out to the government auditors because the government accounting is different standards, and we wanted someone that has that specialized knowledge. So we did reach out to LSL, CPAs, CLA, and then RAMS.
Great. Thank you, Director Guerrero-Leon.
Any other questions regarding, yes, please.
So I just wondered, I saw the escalation of the projected fees for the 3 years that is covered by this proposal, and then I guess the option years. And I was just wondering if that increase year over year is similar to what we've seen, using RAMS in the past for the audit work. I mean, is that consistent with what we're sort of seeing year over year in terms of increases in their fees?
Yes, it is seen in every year, and then they usually always tell us because of increases in salaries and to cover the cost. That's why they have that increase.
Thank you.
I guess since we have you up here, just a maybe a curiosity, but I know in FASB or the financial accounting standards, it's generally recommended that a new auditor comes along every now and then so they don't become familiar with staff and then things fall through the cracks. How long have we had RAMS, and is for the Government Accounting Standards Board, is there something similar?
So we've had RAMS for a while, like 2012, and that's why we wanted to go out and get new quotes, and also for independence purposes. But they have they have multiple partners on staff, and what they do is they rotate partners every 5 years in order to have independence. So they did do that proposal, and they can't propose and do our audit if there's independence issues.
All right, that's great to know. Thank you. Thank you very much. Any other questions? Okay. Thank you, Director.
Thank you.
Moving on to item D. Do we have any questions on D? None? How about item E? No? And finally, item F. Questions on F? We good? Okay. Okay, so I'd like to open this up for the consent calendar up for public comment. Do we have any public comment?
Mr. Mayor, there are no speaker cards, and the city staff did not receive any emails for these topics.
Thank you, Madam City Clerk. Do we have any discussion? We want to talk about it, or just want to move to go forward with the motion here? Any discussion on any of the items?
Move to approve the consent calendar.
Thank you. Is there a second? We have a first motion and a second. All those in favor of approving the consent calendar?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None? Carries unanimously. Thank you. Okay. So moving on past that lengthy consent calendar and to our discussion. So we have, we're going to have an update by our City Attorney, Alex Garagosian.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you.
This presentation is in 3 parts because it's pretty long. There's the 2022 legislative session was very productive. Part 1 is going to discuss the Levine Act and bills related to public safety. So just a quick summary here. There were 2,020 bills introduced. 997 bills were signed into law by the governor. 197 bills were vetoed by the governor. Many bills never left the committees that they were assigned to or were put on hold for next year. And as expected, a lot of the bills that didn't make it through the committees last year have been reintroduced this year. The legislative session is in full swing. Now, the bills we're going to talk about in these 3 presentations, their memos have been written to staff members by the City Attorney's Office on each of them, so staff is fully aware of each of these. The first, actually, you're all aware of, the Military Equipment Use Policy, AB 481. You have adopted an ordinance on this, so it requires local agencies to adopt and maintain a military use policy prior to acquiring or using military equipment. The council adopted an ordinance on May 24, 2022, approving the military equipment use policy that was presented by Captain Amos. And police staff must prepare an annual report on the policy, and it's scheduled to appear before Congress, or the City Council on June 27th. So on June 27th, you'll hear the annual report. AB 1475, posting booking photos. This bill prohibits a police department from sharing on social media booking photos of an individual arrested on suspicion of committing a nonviolent crime unless one of the following circumstances exist. The suspect is a fugitive or an imminent threat to an individual or to public safety, a judge orders their release, or some other exigent circumstance exists. AB 1475 reflects the legislator's concern that when an individual is arrested and found not guilty, but a booking photo was posted on social media, the photo will often turn up in future searches of the individual, which may negatively affect the individual's chances of obtaining employment, government assistance, or other benefits as well. I spoke to Captain Amos about this. Apparently we don't have this practice in Sierra Madre. We don't post photos on our social media pages of people who are booked. So nothing that we should be concerned about. Now, the main bill I want to talk about today is SB 1439, but I want to provide a little background first. So the Political Reform Act, which all of you are trained in because you've taken the AB 1234 ethics training, was approved by voters in 1974 after Watergate. one of the purposes of the Political Reform Act is to require truthful and accurate disclosures of campaign contributions. Now, part of the Political Reform Act, a subset of it, is this Levine Act. The Levine Act has been around for a really long time, and it applies to state. It has applied to state and local appointed officials, but it's never applied to elected officials before. So it would have applied to city council members if they sat on the Local Agency Formation Commission board, or if they sat on the SCAG board. But now it applies to local elected officials as of January 1st, 2023. So here's what it says. And I'm going to go through each of these in more detail. First, regarding pre-decision, so before decision. Cannot make, participate in, or influence a proceeding involving a pending license, permit, or other entitlement for use if the officer willfully or knowingly received a contribution of more than $250 within the preceding 12 months from any party, participant, or agent involved in the proceeding. So that's you, the council member, cannot make, participate in, or influence. Pending the proceeding, you can't accept, solicit, or direct a contribution of more than $250 from any party, participant, or other agent while proceeding for a license, permit, or other entitlement is pending. And post-decision, you can't accept, solicit, or direct a contribution of more than $250 from any party, participant, or agent involved in the decision for 12 months after the decision. So let's talk about each of these in greater detail. Pre-decision. Basically, if the contribution of over $250 is received within 12 months preceding a decision, then you'll need to disclose that, and it's going to be a conflict for you, and you're going to need to recuse yourself from that decision. And we'll talk about what kind of decisions that applies to. But 12 months leading up to the decision, you'll need to disclose and recuse. If the proceeding is pending before you, and you have received if you receive a contribution of over $250 within the past 12 months before the decision is rendered, then the officer may return that contribution within 30 days of the date the officer knows or should have known about the conflict. So if a decision is before you, and you find out that maybe the applicant, maybe someone on the opposing side that's lobbied you, has contributed $250 to your campaign, upon finding out, you have 30 days to return those funds, if you want to participate in the decision. If you don't want to participate in the decision or recuse yourself, you have that opportunity as well. Post-decision. So once your decision's been made, if you receive a contribution of over $250 within 12 months after the decision is rendered, then the officer may return the contribution within 14 days. Officer must not knowingly or willfully accept, solicit, or direct the prohibited contribution. Controlled committees must record cured violations. So basically, you can't accept $250 or more within 12 months after your decision from an applicant or someone opposed to the application that has lobbied you and that has a financial interest. And we'll talk about who these people are. So it applies broadly. It applies to parties. So that one's kind of basic. A person who files an application for or is the subject of a proceeding. You're all used to that because that's how we handle all Political Reform Act and Section 1090 conflict of interest issues. The real complexity with the Levine Act is this participant issue. A participant is defined as any person who supports or opposes a particular decision and who has a financial interest in a proceeding. What does that mean? That means potentially someone who speaks during public comment and who has a financial interest as defined under the Political Reform Act can be someone that's considered a participant in a proceeding. The League of California Cities has taken this up with the state legislature to figure out, is this what you meant? Because this applies very broadly, and it can disqualify a lot of people. And oftentimes, if someone has contributed $250 or more to one of the council members during their campaign, they may have forgotten, the council member may not know that this is the person, they give their public testimony, and then later on there could be a conflict of interest issue. The last slide here will talk about ways to potentially remedy this problem. Proceedings are also defined more broadly than what the Political Reform Act or the Section 1090 laws define a proceeding as. It includes any business, professional, trade, permit, or license. These don't really come up before the council. These are more staff level. It includes land use permits, licenses, and other entitlements for use. That includes legislative decisions, like, for example, zoning changes. So again, a lot broader than what the Political Reform Act does. It includes contracts. So we were talking internally at the city attorney's office about how, if you remember, the YMCA contract was before you at one time. Not this last iteration, but the iteration before, and there were a lot of public commenters. Now assume for a second that you were deciding that contract, and one of those public commenters lived within 500 to 1,000 feet of the YMCA facility that was being rented. They would technically have personal financial interest in that contract, and if they spoke during public comment, they would be considered a participant for purposes of the statute. And so had they contributed over $250 to your campaign, if you wanted to participate, you could either give that contribution back within 30 days, or you could say, this person contributed to my campaign, I make a disclosure, I recuse myself. It's pretty stringent. It applies to franchises as well. The relevant franchise probably that we're going to consider is the Athens franchise. Now, the recommendations we had for city staff were, first, include a disclosure requirement in all development applications. So this is something we've worked on with city staff. Skipping over to number 3, add a disclosure requirement in all city contracts. We've included that. So we're kind of placing the onus on the person, on the contractor or the consultant that we're contracting with, letting them know that, hey, if you have contributed $250 or more to any candidate, you need to let us know before we enter into this contract. And if you don't let us know, you're going to be in violation of the contract terms, and we can terminate the contract on those grounds. So we're placing the onus on them. We're trying to educate our applicants as well as our consultants and our contractors. Going to number 2, this was one of the suggestions, is note parties, participants, and agents' duty to disclose campaign contributions on agendas. So when someone is reading the agenda and they're going to provide a public comment, they can be aware that if they've contributed $250 or more, they should disclose that, so that they put the council members on notice in case the council member is not aware. Lastly is compile a list of campaign contributors who contributed more than $250. That burden rests with the council. So to your knowledge, if you know of, I'm sure you know who's contributed to your campaign and how much, you can keep a list of that. And then if those people come to the dais, or if they come to the lectern to speak, you know who they are, and if they have a personal financial interest for purposes to make them a participant, they should disclose that. The council member obviously wouldn't know whether or not they have a personal financial interest. In the alternative, not listed here, but in the alternative, council members can always choose not to accept contributions greater than $250. That's always an option. If you want to make your lives easier and not worry about this statute, that's probably the easiest thing to do. So, like I said, this presentation, okay, right. I went through these things. This presentation has 3 parts. The part on planning and land use I'm going to treat separately because it's pretty complex. But if the council members have an appetite for it, I can go into the second part that's going to talk about the Public Records Act and Brown Act, or we could put that off to the next meeting, up to the council.
I have so many questions about this that, but maybe that's for one-on-one. We don't have to do it here. I'm not sure it's of public interest as much as it's of interest to the folks sitting here, so.
And the FPPC is issuing regulations on SB 1439 because it's so unclear and because the legislator likely didn't foresee all these potential problems that might arise.
I mean, for example, just one, like you said, that, you know, putting the onus on the public to disclose if they've made a contribution, if they have a personal financial, they're not gonna know if they have a personal financial interest either. I mean, given sort of the way it's, you know, I would never think if I, you know, lived across the street from Sierra Vista and I was here commenting on the contract with the YMCA and I wasn't a member of the YMCA, that would somehow make me have a personal interest just because I lived nearby. That's not gonna be common knowledge.
It's not common knowledge. We could write into the agenda, like, for example, if you live within 1,000 feet of a site under consideration before the council and you've also contributed more than $250, you have a financial interest and you should disclose that on the record. You could include a sentence like that in the agenda, but who reads the agenda in that great detail? I'm not sure anyone does.
So you're saying that doing that would not necessarily help unless they were aware of it, unless they actually read the agenda?
Right, unless they actually read the agenda and understood what they're reading, yeah.
Well, and to be fair, this is a law that applies to elected officials, not to members of the public who want to, you know, contribute to campaigns. And so I think, you know, contracting parties and sophisticated, you know, applicants, you know, I don't mind shifting the burden to them, but I sort of feel like at the end of the day, it's not really the public's responsibility. It's ours as elected officials. But, I mean, this is really gonna be hard to track, potentially. I mean, when we talk about applications, we have no idea who applies for permits at the counter unless they come to us on the agenda. Are we talking about that too?
Pending applications are defined as anything that comes before this body. So
Okay.
you'll see it on the city council meeting agenda.
Okay, so we're not talking about, like, for example, I have work being done at my house right now. I obviously contributed to my own campaign, like, you know, I'm influencing a permit in my backyard.
No. It wouldn't apply to that scenario.
Yeah, we discussed some of this with the SGV COG at the meeting. I don't know if I reported on that meeting or not, or if it was 2 weeks ago or whatever. But one of the carve-outs, and I thought was interesting, because I asked a specific question of the COG's attorney. Let's say the POA or the Firefighter Association gave a donation, and there's an MOU or some kind of opener occurring, and I was informed that there's a carve-out for unions. So he said, no, you would not have to disclose or return that because there is a union carve-out.
I'm not aware, I have to look at it. I'm not aware of a union carve-out. I am aware that there's a carve-out for publicly bid projects. So if the project is publicly bid, this law does not apply to it.
Okay. So do we have an appetite for parts 2 and 3?
Not two, yeah. Two's gonna be a lot.
Okay.
Bring it.
Let's do it.
Okay. Management Analyst Carlson, do you have I think it would be part 3. And the title of that is part 3 regarding transparency in employment. Perfect. Thank you. Okay, so part 3 deals with transparency, which is the Brown Act and Public Records Act, and also employment laws. AB 2647, meeting agendas. Now, the default rule, as you probably know, are that documents other than the agenda, right, so staff reports, presentations like this one, agreements, do not need to be posted 72 hours in advance. That Brown Act requirement only applies to agendas. Staff reports, all those documents can be provided after the fact, later. But if public records are shared with the city council less than 72 hours before the meeting, those public records need to be made available for public inspection at a place designated by the city, right? Usually the city clerk's office. AB 2647 provides an exception to this rule. It says that an initial staff report or similar document containing an executive summary and staff recommendation is made available at least 72 hours before the meeting, and the city posts the public record that is distributed to the city council on its website as soon as it's distributed. The website is listed on the city's agenda, and physical copies are available for inspection beginning at the next regular business hours for the local agency. This all comes about because of this case that was published called Sierra Watch versus Placer County. What happened in that case is the city council was considering a development agreement. Staff and the developer were making last-minute edits, and so they didn't publish it with the rest of the agenda. And so they come in with these last-minute edits and they provide it to the city council. And they made that same document available at the front, but they couldn't make it available at the city clerk's office because it was after hours and the office was closed. Well, the opponents of the project said, hey, you didn't make it available at a physical location because it says it has to be made available for public inspection at a place designated by the city. The city couldn't because that place designated is the city clerk's office and it was closed. So the development agreement got overturned. Legislators didn't like that. They said, forget that. If city staff gets it to council late, that's fine, so long as they post it online and they put their link for the city's website on the agenda so members of the public can access it. And then once City Hall's open, then you can go into City Hall and physically look at the document at the designated place. That's all this law does. It's a little nuanced thing. It's more for the city clerk, less for the city council. Teleconferencing, this came up just this week actually. There are new teleconferencing requirements under the law. Teleconferencing has always been an option under the Brown Act, but it's very, the default rules for teleconferencing are very onerous because the council member who wants to participate via teleconference under these default rules have to agendize the location that they're going to be teleconferencing from, and that location has to be made publicly accessible, and technically has to be ADA accessible. Very hard to meet that standard, so it's not often used. This subdivision E came about during the COVID emergency. As you all remember, every council member stayed home and everyone was able to participate remotely. That exception exists where there's a state of emergency declared by the governor. That state of emergency has expired on February 28th, so subdivision E is no longer an option available to us. What we have now, as of January 1st, 2023, are these two subdivision F options. So you can, as a council member, you can participate remotely, assuming you have a quorum of the city council physically present, if you have a just cause. And just cause means any of the following. A child care or caregiving need of a child, parent, grandparent, grandchild, sibling, etc. 2, a contagious illness that prevents a council member from attending in person. 3, a need related to a physical or mental disability. Or 4, while you're traveling while on official business of the city or another state or local agency. So basically, if you're taking care of someone, if you're feeling sick, if you have some kind of physical or mental disability preventing you, or if you're on some kind of council business. You can also attend remotely if there's an emergency circumstance. Emergency circumstance means a flat tire on Sierra Madre Boulevard, physical or family medical emergency that prevents a council member from attending in person. So last minute, if something comes up that's a physical or family medical emergency, but you still feel like you want to participate in the city council meeting, you can. The process for all this is you let the city clerk know ASAP, and city staff then has to make sure that they can get you to participate remotely, but frankly, more importantly, we have to make sure that under the law, we make these same options available to members of the public. Because under subdivision F, if the council member is able to participate remotely, then the members of the public must also be given that same opportunity. What that means is potentially you have people giving public comment via Zoom. For both just cause and emergency circumstances, you need to have a quorum of the body physically present. And there's a total cap on the number of times an individual council member can take advantage of this. We don't have to get into those details. But that's the gist of that law.
So it's going back on the no reason or no just because, that's a 3-day noticing at the place where you will be. That there has to be an agenda posted at the location where you will be attending the meeting from.
Right. So if you're going to use the default rule for participating remotely, that has to be published on the agenda, and therefore council needs to be provided, the city clerk needs to be provided at least 3 days notice to agendize that properly. If that notice isn't provided, that default rule isn't available. But the subdivision F options are available even after the agenda is published. We might have to amend the agenda, but that option is available post publishing the agenda.
So those other options, members, obviously if you have a contagious illness, you don't want members of the public in there with you. So there's a carve out for that, or they still have to be able to.
So under subdivision F, thank you for asking that question, I failed to mention it. Under subdivision F, you don't list your location, and you don't have to make your location publicly available. And that's the advantage to subdivision F. Unlike the default options, no one's coming to your house. You take that meeting at home remotely.
Then finally, if we're under the default option, and let's say the connection is interrupted, can the council still proceed, or does that connection need to be reconnected?
If under the default option, the council may proceed if the connection is interrupted. Under subdivision F, if the connection is interrupted, the council may not proceed.
Even if there's quorum in person?
Even if there's a quorum in person, because members of the public have been given the opportunity to participate remotely, and you'll be depriving them of the opportunity to participate.
I see. So it's the overall connection, but if it's specific to the council member,
Correct.
then it's probably not a problem then.
Not a problem, correct.
Okay.
But if the Zoom connection is
Right.
down
The
for
overall.
right.
Okay, that's very helpful.
And do we have the setup that we can execute on subdivision F right now? Do we have the technology and the permits and all of that?
Councilmember Parkhurst, our IT department has done a great job during COVID to establish the protocols to have those types of meetings. Currently, our WebEx license is expired, and we're looking at what options are best for the city so that we can, if a situation like this comes before us, it will be prepared.
And what's the cost of the WebEx for us?
On average, it's about $1,000 a year.
$1,000 a year, and it's not something we've budgeted at this time.
It's not something that we budgeted, but it is an insurance policy, and we're just looking at what the options are. We may have the option to buy in for one meeting, one-time event, and then the annual subscription would be about $1,000.
Also relevant for today, orderly conduct at meetings, SB 1100. So prior law authorize the presiding officer of a meeting to order the removal of an individual disrupting the meeting. The individual must be provided with a warning prior to removal, but prior law did not define what constitutes disruptive behavior. SB 1100 defines disrupting and provides 2 examples: failing to comply with reasonable and lawful regulations adopted by a legislative body related to a public comment or any other law, and engaging in behavior that constitutes use of force or a true threat of force. And so the case that brings this about is Acosta versus City of Costa Mesa. The facts are kind of interesting. The City Council considered whether to enter into an agreement with the Immigrations and Customs Enforcement to have its police officers designated as immigration agents with the authority to enforce federal immigration law in the city. Plaintiff Acosta was present at the meeting, and during his public comment, he called the mayor a racist pig. Acosta repeated his comment, which prompted the mayor to cut Acosta's speaking time short by calling for a recess. At a subsequent meeting, Plaintiff Acosta asked members of the audience who supported his viewpoint to stand, despite a warning from the mayor not to do so. The mayor then recessed the meeting, and an officer attempted to escort Acosta out of council chambers. The court ultimately determined that the mayor was correct in his actions because asking members of the public to stand disrupted the meeting, and disruption of the meeting is grounds to remove a person from chambers. Switching to the Public Records Act, disclosure of architectural work. So architectural work is protected by federal copyright law, and the Public Records Act says that all public agency documents are subject to disclosure unless an exemption applies or something in federal or state law prevents that disclosure. But there was a conflict here because while the Public Records Act says that these architectural works are not supposed to be made public under federal law, the Brown Act says that everything the body considers needs to be in the agenda packet. So members of the public would then have access to all these architectural works because it's in the agenda packet. So this new law remedies this problem. Architectural work may only be reviewed at the Planning Department's premises, and it may not be copied by or distributed to members of the public without permission of the design professional. The Planning Department may only make copies for internal review by the city, distribution to the legislative body, or access during a meeting where a project incorporating the copyrighted architectural work is being considered. So therefore, we're not going to include architectural work in agenda packets anymore. But site plans and massing diagrams are not similarly protected. So those can be included in the agenda packet. You will still receive copies of the protected architectural work, but those will be distributed to you at the dais.
So that's in lieu of asking the applicants to waive the right to submit. We're just gonna have a blanket not.
Correct. Yeah. The default will be to not do it, and then if a member of the public requests it, we'll reach out to the owner of that copyright to see if they want to disclose. If they don't, then no.
City Attorney Garagosian, can I ask you a question? Is this pertaining to our city council, or does it also pertain to our commissions?
It pertains to the commissions as well, yes. Yeah. Yeah.
So the architectural diagrams we've seen of, for example, of the monastery properties, we wouldn't see those in the future.
You would see those. You would see those. Members of the public won't see those in the agenda packet.
Okay.
But you would see those. They would be distributed to you separately.
Got it.
Prohibited disclosure of information, AB 1480. Existing law prohibits an employer from asking an applicant to disclose information concerning an arrest or detention that did not result in a conviction or a conviction that was judicially dismissed or ordered sealed. This rule does not apply to peace officers. That exception is extended for police officers who are non-sworn members of the, or not police officers, but to non-sworn members of the police department. Also allows the city to release the same information about non-sworn employees or applicants to other government agencies. As you know, in a police department you have sworn and non-sworn personnel, so this applies the same rule to police officers, to the non-sworn personnel. So now we can disclose information regarding arrests of non-sworn personnel or convictions or detentions. Bereavement leave. I've worked with the assistant manager on this, so our policy is up to date. It requires that employers are required to provide up to 5 days of non-consecutive unpaid bereavement leave. Employees may use other banked leave instead of the bereavement leave that's unpaid. Bereavement leave must be completed within 3 months of the date of the family member's death, and employers may request documentation within 30 days of the first day of leave. This actually applies more broadly to, I believe it's any organization with 5 or more employees, but it also applies to local public agencies like Sierra Madre.
They have to be non-consecutive?
Do they have to be non-consecutive?
This is 5 days of non-consecutive unpaid bereavement leave. So that means you can only take 1 day at a time?
Let's see. Bereavement leave must be completed within 3 months. Employer.
The first
one.
Employers are required to provide up to 5 days of non-consecutive unpaid bereavement leave.
So it's up to the employee to choose whether or not they want to take it consecutively or non-consecutively.
Okay.
That makes more sense.
Wage transparency. Existing law requires an employer to provide the pay scale for a position to an applicant upon request and to maintain personnel files for 4 years. SB 1162 requires the city to include pay scales for any existing job or any job posting and to maintain records of job title and wage rate history for each employee, regardless of whether the position is salaried or hourly, full-time or part-time. And I confirmed with staff that we do in fact do this already.
Forever?
No, 4 years.
Oh, okay.
And that concludes the presentation.
All right, do we have any, thanks for entertaining our questions during the presentation, but do we have any follow-up questions regarding the presentation? Nope? Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Open this to public comment.
I don't think this gets open to public comment.
It is a discussion item, so
Okay, yeah, so let's open up to public comment. Thank you. Any public comment, Madam City Clerk?
Mr. Mayor, we don't have any speaker cards and no emails were received.
Thank you. So let's close that discussion item unless we have any comments regarding that. Okay. Moving on to future items. Do we have any future items for future agendas proposed? Now, I have one and my computer turned off. You can bear with me. The League of California Cities has reached out for us. I know typically we don't write letters or have opinions on political issues, but I think we have talked about issues that affect our residents and our city. So we might want to take a look at the 3 that the league is proposing to us. It's AB 1708. Also the 2023-2024 state budget priorities for cities. Specifically, I like the unfunded mandate issues for our city. And then finally, there's a state ballot measure restricting voters' input in local taxing authority. They'd like a resolution on that as well. So if we could bring that back to council as a discussion item, perhaps have the city attorney's office provide a presentation on those 3, I think that'd be helpful.
Mr. Mayor, as long as we're doing that, I had one other from CPA that came my way, and that is AB 1538 by Muarachi. And it is one that is being sponsored by CPA, and it'd be good to get a briefing on that.
Sure, yeah. Mr. City Attorney, you got direction on that one as well? Okay, anything else? All right, entertain a motion to adjourn.
I move we adjourn the meeting tonight of March 28th, 2023.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. We are adjourned to the next regular meeting. Thank you.